Matt Reardon.
Hello, this is Tony Geiger with Attorney General Lynn Fitch's office.
Hey, Tony, how you doing?
I'm well. I was just listening to your voicemail.
Yes, sir.
And so I wanted to call you right back. And if you want, I can give you my email. And if you want to email that, because you said it was long, but I can listen to you too.
Yeah, I prefer you listen to me, and you know it's very serious stuff, and it's
Yes, sir.
you know
and you are aware that we didn't come into office until 2020.
no,
so
I know.
I would have to go back, and I don't know what occurred, and I'm not familiar, and I apologize of what happened.
Yes, sir. I know
it's 2017, but I do want to hear it, and then I want you to email me.
Yes, sir. That's perfectly fine. That's all I'm looking for here is, I know y'all came into y'all basically walked into this mess that the previous folks had
Yes, sir.
basically created.
Yes, sir. And then COVID struck, and half the people that we tried to work with were not there. We didn't ever stop. We had to double down during COVID. We weren't able to be at home. We had to be out. But anyway,
and no,
okay.
I understand that, and I wanted to start off by saying, look,
Yes, sir.
I hate that I had to basically come out accusing the Attorney General's office of complicity in it and
Right.
not faithfully. But it seems like, the only way that I can get anybody to even give me an ear, because, people have just literally, they've done their best to cover this thing up. And I don't know how. This is not the America that I signed up to protect
Right.
and defend.
And thank you for your service on the front end. I have a nephew that's a Purple Heart recipient, and I put y'all at the top for keeping me safe.
Yes,
Thank you, but I want to give you also my email address before we get off the phone.
Sure. Let me go ahead and get that from you.
All right, it's Tony, Tony,
Okay.
dot Geiger, Geiger, at AGO.ms.gov.
GEIGER. My autocorrect messed up on
sorry.
me.
I'm sorry. It's like a Geiger counter, but it's Tony, Tony, dot Geiger,
Okay.
Eiger,
Okay.
at
AGO.
at AGO.ms.gov.
Okay. Got it. Well, yeah, I'll go ahead and kind of let you know. So, Tony, I'm doing a documentary on it.
Yes, sir.
And that's the only way that basically I could, I felt safe and
Right.
that I could hold these people, because it's involving the amount of people that it's involving, and it's going to sound, you may think I'm crazy whenever I tell you this, but if I
You
didn't,
said the DOJ is involved?
the DOJ is involved, and it's like, who do you turn to when all the people that you go to for help seem to be part of the problem? And here's what happened. So back in May of 2017, and I've got all this. I've got substantial evidence on. May 1st of 2017, I was standing in front of the Confederate statue on the square in Oxford, holding the state flag of Mississippi and had a gun on my hip. Legislatively, constitutionally, wasn't doing anything wrong. And it was just me standing there. I'm a constitutionalist. I'm basically a Tea Party patriot is how I kind of view myself. And Deputy Sheriff pulled up. He asked me if I had a permit to be here. I told him I had the First Amendment. He said, do you have a permit to be here? I was standing on public property right in front of the statue.
Yes, sir. I know exactly where you are.
Yeah, and I said, no, I don't have a permit. He said, all right, you got to leave. I said, why do I have to leave? He said, because you're going to go to jail if you don't. And so I was trying to find out how, a city ordinance had the ability to override the Constitution, the law of the land. And he wasn't wearing his badge. I was recording all of this, and he said if I didn't leave right then, I was going to go to jail. I said, I'm going to take this to my attorney. You can't threaten me with my First Amendment rights. And I took about 7 steps off. I turned around to ask him what his badge number was. That infuriated him because he wasn't wearing his badge, and he charged at me. He strong-armed me. He put me under arrest. The video went viral on the internet, and they had to put Timmy Pruitt on an administrative leave. And so that right there is where the conspiracy started. Is the sheriff's department in the county came under a lot of heat, and Timmy Pruitt who's nearing retirement, was obviously facing punishment. Fast forward to, Robin Tannehill, the current mayor of Oxford. Her husband Ray was the attorney that headed up my ex's child custody matter. He was her attorney.
Mr. Mayor,
Well, I spoke out at City Hall on May 15th or May 16th. Pat Patterson would not let me speak. He said I needed to be on the board minutes. I still addressed the City Hall about the state flag. I said, it's a taxpayer thing. If the majority of the taxpayers vote for a new flag, I'm cool with it. But my thing is, you shouldn't take state-funded tax dollars from the state and refuse to fly the state flag. I believe it should be an obligation. My view will never change on that. If you take state-funded tax dollars, it should be an obligation to fly the state flag. Well, I spoke out at City Hall. I said what I needed to say. I didn't threaten anybody. I was slotted to speak out at the next City Hall meeting on June 6th. That just so happened to be the day that the mayor was elected. She was elected June 6, 2017. Well,
yes, sir. On
the 22nd of May, Robin Tannehill and Ray Tannehill took out an emergency injunction on me, and effectively they got Judge Alderson to push it through. They effectively barred me from speaking at City Hall on the day of her election, which was huge red flags, because here you have the incoming mayor, that is effectively, trampling on the First Amendment rights of a constituent. That was slotted to speak out. It's actually on the board minutes still at City Hall, where I was supposed to speak right behind Joe East. So they canceled me right there.
Yes,
I met with the FBI on May 25th, 2017 at the direction of Bob Norman, Assistant U.S. Attorney Bob Norman, because I had a death threat that was put out on me, and also the Tannehills canceling my speaking gig. That was a serious issue. So I met with the feds on May 25th. I discussed all this and how I purchased an AR-15 and a bulletproof vest to protect myself and my family on May 20th. Well, the next day, I was ambushed on the square by sheriff's deputies and arrested, thrown on the ground. Wouldn't tell me what they were arresting me for till they got me to the jail, and it was there that I found out that I was charged with aggravated stalking. The state claimed honor before May 8th, 2017. I put Todd and Ashley Lynch in fear of their life with an AR-15. Well, I have a bill of sale proving I didn't purchase it until May 20th. The FBI knew that I didn't purchase it till May 20th from the meeting, but they sat around like a lifeguard watching a kid drown with their hands stuck in the cookie jar. Because for me to truly be guilty of the state's crime, it would make it where I was automatically guilty of lying to the FBI. And so I've been demanding to be indicted for lying to the FBI if they actually truly think that I'm guilty of that crime. They kept me locked up from a week before the mayor was elected until exactly 7 days after she was sworn into office. July 6th was whenever I got out. They never did it. 96 hours before they brought me before a judge for a bond hearing, even though the state of Mississippi affords 48. So they knew they went twice as long right there. I was supposed to already get released on the lowest bond on the bond chart, but instead, Judge Carolyn Bell set my bond, and I've never been accused of a felony before. I've never done a felonious crime. She set my bond at $150,000 on this bogus charge that I even tried to assert I had evidence that I couldn't have committed. She kept cutting me off, telling me I had the right to remain silent. She never afforded me a preliminary hearing, which the state of Mississippi requires within 14 days. Otherwise, I was supposed to be released on my own recognizance. They kept me imprisoned for 6 weeks' time. A presumably innocent and was innocent American and Marine Corps veteran in order to keep me silent and to keep me away while the mayor was assuming her position as mayor of Oxford. Then, to make matters worse, they coerced me under pressure because they used my daughter. My 2-year-old daughter was held away from me and wrapped up in her own court ordeal at the time. They used my daughter to basically steer me into pleading out, even though my attorney said, yeah, I know you didn't do it, but sometimes if the system wants you, they're going to find a way to get you. They're going to railroad you with a heap of other charges if you don't take this plea deal and get on down the road. But it was pleading out to something that I did not do. It was a lot like the Michael Flynn thing that happened. Pleading out to something I didn't do. They banished me from Oxford and Lafayette County for 5 years. Essentially the term of the mayor's run. Okay, so that now they got me completely gone for the whole run. And they also made me sign a covenant to not sue Lafayette County, the city of Oxford, any elected officials, any appointed officials, any employees, the sheriff of Lafayette County, any of his duly appointed deputies, and also Todd or Ashley Lynch. When this, if it wasn't directly tied into the mayor, which all signs have shown direct evidence to, that they wouldn't have needed to put city of Oxford elected officials. The sheriff's department has hidden information. There is a call that investigator Jared Bundren received on May 24, 2017 in regards to threats that I supposedly made from my Facebook, but they will not say who made that phone call. And I think it's very important because if it was the mayor or if it was the mayor's husband, it adds to the conspiracy element right there about this being something that was premeditated.
Yes, sir.
And the county attorney sealed it up as not privy to the Public Information Act. And so I ended up having to file my post-conviction relief last minute. Since then, I have been targeted by the state of Mississippi. My ex falsely accused me of rape. In November of 2018, she admitted on a recorded phone call that her husband had conspired with her to try to frame me for rape. The Olive Branch Police Department filed charges against her for filing a false report, but they had basically bought off the judge in that, and the judge let her off scot-free, even though this was the second time in 2 years. A year before that, she tried to falsely assert that I had molested my child. And keep in mind, this whole time, Ray Tannehill is up here on the pinnacle as far as attorneys. Her attorneys have direct involvement with him, and they're trying to ultimately pin stuff on me, which is clearly untrue. That Department of Child Services dismissed it, as false. But nobody's ever held her accountable for it. I was arrested for simply going up to Olive Branch Court to get public records of what happened, on the outcome of the court case. They baited me up there. They told me I would have to drive an hour up there to request the court records and that the judge wanted to address me about that. And he lashed out on me for no reason. Told me if I ever called the court or came up there again that he'd have me arrested for contempt, and asked me what it is that I wanted to address him about. I said, Your Honor, it was my ex. She falsely accused me of rape. If you let her off, you directly created a monster. And, because I'm not being afforded the equal protections under the laws. I'm being directly targeted here, and nobody gives a damn.
I hate that. Sir, do you have, and of course, I pray you do you have legal counsel, an attorney?
No, I've filed 300 pages of court documents on my own as my own attorney. I'm very articulate, and I've studied the law, but
you're very articulate. I was hoping that you had secured an attorney because this is so serious.
I was hoping that the state of Mississippi would pay for an attorney for me, because they have disenfranchised me to the fullest. I had a golden opportunity ahead. Now I got the stalker label, and I can't even get a job. I got 4 kids.
The only group I know that does that kind of stuff is Mississippi Legal Services. I know
they won't help me.
They will not help you.
They won't, because the top advocate attorney was who my ex coincidentally got for her false rape accusation thing.
What about Veterans Affairs? Because a lot of times they will step in and help veterans with attorneys.
Well, I mean,
I'm just asking. I'm trying to come up. I've listened to you, and it's painful.
Oh, it doesn't even stop there, because I was arrested 3 times in 3 months on bogus charges just over the last 3 months. Like December 28th, I sent Joe East, the sheriff, 3 emails because he would read them and not respond about, trying to address this issue with my ex and how I was getting targeted and how I wasn't able to see my child in over a year due to lies. And when he wouldn't respond, I said, after the next day, I said, you know what, I'm just going to go confront the sheriff, try to talk to him in person, because he is a publicly appointed position, or a publicly elected position. I believe that he should, he has that ultimate responsibility and accountability right there.
Yes, sir.
So I went to the sheriff's department, and I parked beside the sheriff's car, and it said for sheriff's department. It didn't say for sheriff's deputies, but it was after hours, and 2 deputies came out. One of them that had already, been gunning for me because of the documentary, and he said, "You need to move your car." And I said, I'll move my car as soon as I talk to Joey. I just need to talk to Joey. He knows I'm out here. And then he said, if you move your car now, or you're going to jail for disorderly conduct. And I simply said, I'm not being disorderly, because I wasn't causing any ruckus. I was just standing out there waiting for the sheriff.
Right.
And he said, "That's it, you're under arrest." And he charged at me, and I was already starting to move my car, and just my natural reaction, he starts charging me. I felt like, honestly, I hadn't done anything wrong. So I kind of jumped to the side, and he literally slammed me into the ground, slammed my head into the ground, took my cell phone and slammed it into the ground. You can see it bounce. I actually got the security cam footage. I subpoenaed that off the front of the sheriff's department. They will not give me one camera angle, which, when I slowed the tape down, you can see 2 deputies making an exchange. And I had 2 cell phones. It looks like one cell phone is being exchanged, and then the other one is going to the other officer right there. I don't know exactly what's going on. They will not give me that camera. This is where I said, ultimately I feel like the Attorney General's office has a responsibility here with these serious accusations being made. Ultimately the district attorney that, there were key things that should have been done and definitely should not have been done that occurred. And I feel like, honestly, it is ultimately the buck stops at the Attorney General's office, who is the lead law enforcement of the state, overseeing these district attorneys, the people that went completely on and still are. I got 6 open cases in justice court right now where, the prosecutor of Lafayette County has refused, even though there's no evidence. My ex retaliated against me from her getting arrested on the making false reports charge. She filed a charge against me that I just recently found out about, of me making harassing phone calls in January of last year to her, when I only sent 1 text message because she falsely called DHS and got DHS back involved while we had a child at Le Bonheur. And so, of course, I just, I aired out my disgust, but I didn't threaten her, and that was it. And, she went to the sheriff's department then. The deputy called me, said, don't say anything else to her unless it's about the child. And I said, trust me, I'm not going to say another thing to her, period. And I didn't. And then all of a sudden, like a month later, she goes and just files this charge out of the blue. Well, she wanted to dismiss the charge as part of a chancery agreement, and the prosecutor is refusing to dismiss it, even though there's no evidence. And, you know, to me, it shows the claims that I've been claiming all along of malicious prosecution, prosecutorial misconduct, and preferential prosecution.
This is just unbelievable.
And the mayor's getting reelected next month. And this is why the first 4 years, her term right now that she's wrapping up, the last 4 years has been illegitimate. It's been fraudulent. You know, election fraud occurred. A innocent citizen, Marine Corps veteran, was deprived of all of his rights and locked away in silence, prevented from speaking, and she should never be able to hold a public office again.
Would you please send me an email and let me just look into this? I apologize. I've stayed late. I've got to go to my 4:30 meeting, and they're calling for me. So would you please just email me when you get a chance?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So Tony.Geiger@AGO.ms.gov.
Yes,
okay.
sir. Yes, sir. My name is Tony Geiger.
All right. Yeah, so I just want somebody to look at. Yes, sir. Thank you. And I just want somebody to look at the evidence right before their eyes. I mean, I want to give you 2 website addresses. I've got several different domains, but writingwiththeoutlaw.com. I'm calling it Writing with the Outlaw because obviously I was outlawed. I was exiled from the city of Oxford in Lafayette County. Writingwiththeoutlaw.com. And outlaw.news. I'm working on actually outlaw.news was down earlier. It may be back up now, but I've literally, I started a production company.
Well, please send that to me, and I will definitely look into it. And I wish you the best, sir, and thank you for your service.
All right, Tony. What kind of commitment can I get from the Attorney General's office about getting involved in this thing prior to the election next month?
I just don't know. I have no idea without looking at it. I wouldn't want to promise something that wouldn't occur. I would never give somebody false hope.
No, I know. But, I've done all the legwork on this thing and uncovering every last, I've put myself right up to the frying pan just to get every last bit.
And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I've got to go. I apologize.
Okay.
All right, bye-bye.
Thanks. Matt Reardon.
Yes, sir. This is Tony Geiger with the Attorney General Litigation Assistance.
Hey, Tony.
How are you?
I'm good.
I was just returning your call.
Tony, we just talked.
I know. Oh, I'm sorry. I was calling you when I'm so busy. It's crazy. You got to help me because I got to call the next guy. He said I wouldn't call him back, so I always want to call people back. I apologize. Let me call this guy for you, bro.
I don't think you're going to call me back after you get all this.
Sir?
I said I don't think you're going to call me back after you get my whole spill down.
I'll call you back. I don't know that I can help you, but I'm sure going to call you back.
Well, if you guys can't help me, then who's going to help me? And do I just have to take the law into my own hands at that point?
No, sir. No, sir.
That's all I'm asking.
Yes, sir. I wish you could find a competent attorney to represent you.
I wish I could find the money, but the state of Mississippi is directly to blame for that.
Sorry. All right, well, let me call the guy. I'm sure he thinks I didn't tell him by saying I was calling him right back. I apologize. Let me call the next number, 666. That's the number.
Thanks, Tony.
You ain't got no recorder going while you're at trial, do you?
No.
Okay. I'm just making sure, because you ain't supposed to do none of that inside the court.
I don't know why they're... Did they see me with a recorder? Did they see... They're just talking off the top of their head. They know this is bullshit. They know it's unfair. They know they're, quite frankly, going against the Constitution. They've shredded it. I'm looked at. I don't get due process. I don't get due process in this fucking
I didn't
county.
ask you all that. I just asked you, did you have to...
No. Tell her to hurry the hell up.
You're on the judge's
God's my only judge. Definitely, I answer to no man.
Well, the judge decided to keep that.
This bullshit. It's kidnapping. It's freaking organized crime. Ray Tannehill, Christy McCoy.
Come on in, Rudy. Come on in.
What's that?
Come back around.
Yes, sir.
You please sit. What was their name?
Wes Gilmore, Elizabeth Reardon, Amanda Wells, Trish Burke, and Michelle Burke.
Elizabeth Reardon?
Yes, your
You
mother.
do realize my mother lives in Georgia, correct?
I do. This is a list of proposed, the holidays are coming, together
No.
or whatever.
I don't have family, thanks to you. Thanks to your client. Thanks to Lafayette County.
I wonder if you could just and what we would propose is Saturday from 9 o'clock till 5 o'clock and Sunday from 9 o'clock to 5 o'clock every other weekend until further order of the court. We have January 28th as a proposed day for resetting.
Where would he exercise these visitations?
It's totally, up to him where he wants to go, just as long as his wife's not present.
Can you show one report? I mean, the burden of proof has got to be on them, Your Honor. They can't just make silly, frivolous claims like that without having any type of proof to back it up. This is slander. It's libel. It's defamation. And she knows it.
Mr. Reardon?
It is. Your Honor, the Constitution. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I took an oath, a lifelong oath, to uphold and defend the Constitution. And this is not the way court procedure is supposed to work, where you have to prove your innocence. It's supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, not guilty until proven innocent. Where did the courts go sideways?
Mr. Reardon, you're on my last nerve. I told you that I'm not going to hear your case until we have a hearing.
Your Honor, is there another judge? If you're having surgery, this is involving my daughter that's been kidnapped from me since January.
I'm having surgery, but I'm going to be back.
At the beginning of the year, Your Honor, but I have pressing matters that need to get addressed before then. Child support, my family of 4 is getting killed because they're taking half of the residual income that I have coming in. My economic opportunity in this city and county are destroyed, and I'm having to meet time deadlines, filings for Supreme Court to appeal my circuit court matter, which was all a witch hunt to begin with. It's like my hands are tied, and I feel like this county is doing their best to try to literally just push me over the cliff. They're not giving me the opportunity to support my family the way that I need to and be the father that I need to for my kids.
Mr. Reardon, I'm going to tell you one more time. If you want visitation, you can have supervised visitation every other weekend that she's set it out, 9 to 5, 9 to 5 on Saturday and Sunday. You'll get to see your child. That's what you've been complaining to me, that you had.
But where did I deserve supervised?
What?
Where once did I deserve supervised visitation and not regular parental
Until we
visitation?
have a hearing to determine if any of these allegations are substantiated, that's what we're going to do.
Then But there is already court matters that have been ruled upon by Judge Alderson that said that they have no right to come in without a judge's order and withhold visitation. There's prior court matters that have already been adjudged in this very court, Your Honor.
Not in my court. I don't know what you're talking about. Again, if she's wrong and you've got the proper paperwork, she may be in trouble.
There actually
Until we have a hearing.
there's pending circuit court matters against Mona Pittman, against her client.
I don't care what's been said.
This is all retaliation.
It's not retaliation. I'm giving you what you asked for. Now,
I've asked for
is
fair.
your client employed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, I'm not going to suspend the child support this time, but
Can we cut it down at least?
I don't know what your financial status is, Mr. Rudy.
I got $1,200 a month in residual coming in. She takes $600 off the top. When we did the agreement, I had about $6,000 a month in residual coming in 4 years ago.
Your Honor, unfortunately, I haven't seen Mr. Reardon's 805 and I don't have his tax returns or anything of that nature.
You can see my bank account, see my deposits.
All right, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Temporarily, I'm going to reduce it to 400. And I'll give a break to that, and then but until we come back, it'll be back to 600 if I find out it doesn't need to be adjusted. But because there are some extenuating circumstances, I don't know if he's right or wrong.
I haven't lied to this court once,
Unjustly
Your Honor.
treated or whatever. But I'm telling you, Mr. Reardon, you better have your case put together when we come back.
I haven't lied one time to the courts.
I'm not asking you whether you lied or not. I'm telling you to have your documents ready, your financials ready, your pay stubs, your bank accounts, your 805 financial statement, whatever you're required to do, as a lawyer would do, that's what you're going to have to do. And I'm not going to tell you again. You come in here empty-handed with your hat in hand, you're not going to get any relief.
Your Honor, I've got filings, I've got motions, I've got...
You're recording my statement?
No, sir.
All right.
I don't have anything further, Your Honor.
Withdraw an order, and have you got his address?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. You got his email, I think. He emailed you. You can
Yes, Your Honor.
email him an order.
Yes, Your Honor.
Get me an order on this, and we'll set it for the 28th of January, and we'll proceed on whatever pleadings are properly filed.
Yes, Your Honor. There'll be 2 orders, one appointing the guardian ad litem and then one.
I'm going to object to your appointment. I don't trust anybody you appoint, Mona, and I'm going to
You're not
object to
appointing,
it.
I'm appointing. That's Ms. Solinger back there.
Which Mona Pittman,
Ms. Solinger is a trusted attorney in this community, and she will write it like she sees it. And I trust her, so she'll be the guardian ad litem. All right, that'll conclude this hearing.
yes, Your Honor.